Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're talking about asbestos in schools again. Coming up again. It's funny, we did an interview last week that's not even been published yet, and in there I gave an example about asbestos in schools and pupils being known to kick footballs, kick panels, all the rest of it about asbestos, and the school being shut down and things like that.
And here we are. 3 days.
Exactly. Here we are, just looking on BBC News 3 days ago. A pupil kicked a hole in a wall and sparked a school asbestos fear. So, again, it's not something that happened years and years ago that isn't happening again now. It's happening today, again and again.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we feel when we talk about these instances, we kind of think, also get the impression that we're kind of just bleating on there, and this doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
That it's kind of a thing of the past, or in the real world, does that really happen?
You would say that. I'll be all right,
exactly,
Jack.
Yeah.
It's that kind of...
Yeah.
I feel like that's the defence that we come up against. Everybody thinks they'll be all right. Everybody thinks this doesn't happen in the real world. It won't happen in their school. It won't happen to their children.
Exactly that. This is 3 days ago on the BBC website. It's happening, and it's still happening.
And, I mean, what's more shocking, or what is shocking about this case, is that the report just goes on to talk about that basically the council's now looking for £100,000 to resurvey all the schools in the county, because after making checks, they've identified that their surveys were inaccurate.
Yeah.
Which again, it's shocking to find out this information. And then the report also goes on to state that the council's relying on asbestos information that was gathered, in some cases, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Which,
that's the issue, isn't it?
And that is the issue. And on the face of it, right, asbestos doesn't grow. It's not going to appear. It's not going to suddenly, appear on the back of a door or anything like that. We know this, right? It's not. It's wherever it was input into the building and part of the construction. It always will be, and that's it. Like I say, it's not just going to magically appear. However, the problem that I've got with the fact that relying on information from 20 years ago is the fact that in that time we've had 2 regulatory changes specifically with regards to asbestos, and we've also had health and safety executive guidance changes, specifically with regards to asbestos and asbestos surveying.
Yeah.
And as a council, if a council isn't getting that information updated, it's kind of beggars belief that anyone else would be able to get that updated.
Yeah. What really kind of concerns me is this is something that's been picked up now. Okay, so for somebody to be able to kick and damage asbestos and it only be identified now, what's happened previously?
Yeah.
Obviously the report sort of states where, as you quite rightly said, asbestos management obligations were carried out as far back as 20 years. The fact that this particular item was not even classed as suspected asbestos cast doubt on the surveys itself.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what's happened in those 20 years as well? This is one incident that's been picked up for whatever reason. For children to be able to kick and damage asbestos, what has actually happened in that time frame to that asbestos or any other item in that building that hasn't been picked up as being an issue?
Yeah.
How many children have been exposed to stuff that hasn't been identified previously and hasn't been picked up as an ongoing issue?
Yeah.
We could be talking hundreds of children that have been exposed to asbestos fibre.
Thousands.
Over the 20 years.
Over 20 years, you're talking thousands of possible exposures and what have you. And that's the thing, right? It's not like That's what we're saying. It's not as if the asbestos has just appeared, and it's always been there. And they've had kind of not even just ample opportunity, but ample triggers that should have made them look at, is our information good enough?
Yeah.
Are we up to scratch? And like I say, there's 2 regulation changes: the 2005 regs and when they changed, and the 2012 regs, and also, like I say, the actual health and safety executive guidance when we changed from MDHS 100, which was a guidance note about how to find and sample and test for asbestos, to HSG 264, Asbestos, the Surveyor's Guide. And within the Surveyor's Guide, it changed quite a lot. It implicitly started kind of highlighting information that clients should be aware of, clients should be looking for in a surveyor, clients should be looking for in their own reports, as well as the industry on what they need to be including and what they should include. And at that point, for me, and that alone, that should have been the trigger that you kind of need to take stock and look at your asbestos survey information, your asbestos registers, and go, well, the stuff that we had done in 2000 and we're now in 2010, is it meeting this guidance or not? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that happened and somebody kind of has misjudged it.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say, obviously the council's asking for £100,000 to kind of looking for an emergency budget by the sounds of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that strikes to me, I get a feeling, and obviously we don't know the facts, the full details. That's a bit of a panic from the council and it suggests to me that they haven't managed this at all correctly and how they should have done over the years.
It's either a big knee jerk.
Because this shouldn't be a surprise.
No, it shouldn't.
This shouldn't be a surprise. If, for whatever reason, you have an inadequate survey or poor survey that's been carried out by somebody that you've done all your competency checks and you've employed them to do the job, if you're managing this asbestos portfolio situation correctly and you've got all the checks in place, this should have been identified 19 years ago because the correct processes in place to one, update, check the validity of the surveys. You've got training on site for the individuals that are managing the actual individual buildings. You're correctly carrying out works in these buildings that identify and assess the risk to asbestos. All of this over that 20-year period would have been flagged up before this.
Well, you're right, and that's one of the things that I thought about as well. Like, you're telling me a school building hasn't had any works done in 20 years.
Exactly.
And fair enough, this might be a part of the school that hasn't been touched for the 20 years, but the likelihood, most schools...
I don't think you could have a school that hasn't had any maintenance or even minor refurbishment in a 20-year period.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. It's like, again, have they had refurbs done? And have they might have highlighted asbestos in other areas of school, but again, if they did, that could have flagged it up. But if not, well, why not?
Yeah.
Because it should have.
Yeah, exactly. Even down to the site caretakers slash site managers on site, if they're correctly trained in asbestos awareness and how to manage asbestos on a day-to-day basis, their eyes would be open to what is actually present in their site.
Yeah, exactly.
And, we're not talking about hidden asbestos here.
No.
We're talking somebody's kicked it. So,
you can see it.
It must be
it's on the wall.
It must be an eye shot.
Yeah.
So to have gone 20 years and it to be a surprise, it just blows my mind.
No, you're right. And that's the thing. If you have trained your site staff adequately, the asbestos awareness training, that does go into quite some depths of the extent and locations and types of asbestos materials that have been used.
Yeah.
And all right, as a caretaker, you're not going around the school doing a new survey. No. Nobody's doing a new survey. But like you just said, your eyes would be open, and as you walk around, you might look at a panel and go, do you know what? That's not in the survey.
Yeah.
That's not in the survey. And now I've been on that training, I've got doubts. I think I'm going to suggest we get this tested.
Yeah. And even down to external contractors as well. If you're employing correctly asbestos trained contractors to come in, work on your site, again, you would have maybe highlighted that scenario, decorators, getting the decorators in, they have to have that training.
Yeah, exactly. You're telling me the wall's not been painted for 20 years?
Exactly that. So all this just creates a bigger kind of question mark over, it's not just down to a poor survey.
Well, that's it. And that's what I was going to say earlier. It feels like a bit of a, when you read it, at first it feels like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction of, there's been one piece of asbestos missed on a survey, a kid's disturbed it, now we've got this big problem, oh shit, we need all the schools resurveying. That feels like a bit of a knee-jerk.
Yeah, it's not an isolated incident.
Well, that's it. And it's like, that's how it reads, that it is an isolated incident. But that knee-jerk doesn't warrant that. So for me, that makes me question that I think there probably has been other incidents, or there's other knowledge of, do you know what? I don't think we've got everything we should have in place here. And that's how it feels. That's my gut. That somebody has gone, do you know what? This isn't the first time, or so-and-so's already made these comments to me. It feels like that. And that's why they're now saying, do you know what? We need to get everything resurveyed. And if there are those doubts and those issues there, then definitely that needs resurveying, because you can't go on managing blindly because, well, like I said earlier, the asbestos that's in these buildings was input in the buildings when they were constructed. It's there. It was there. It's always going to be there. And now if there is highlighted missed asbestos, well, yeah, it does call into question the validity of the surveys. And if it is wide reaching, then definitely need kind of resurveying overall. But it's just, I don't know. It still just shocks me. And that's the thing. Like, I'm in the asbestos industry. This is not the first time I've heard of this, but each and every time that incidents like this happen, it takes me aback, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, I just question everything. Like, how can we be in this situation again in 2021?
Yeah. It is shocking, and kind of just repeating what you said earlier, coming off the back of last week's podcast.
Yeah, when we mentioned it.
The only way really we are going to make a step change is bringing the awareness outside of the industry, bringing the awareness outside of the trade sphere that kind of has been focused on. It's making the everyday people aware of this situation, because it only from the voices of kind of questioning, is everything okay?
Yeah.
Are we all up to date? Is everything being managed correctly? Is there a process in place? And let's not make it a secret. Let's just, it needs to be at the forefront of people's minds.
I think we should do that on a podcast. I think we should draw up a list of questions that people can go and ask about their workplace, their school, their church, wherever they go to in their everyday life. The questions will kind of essentially be the same. And I think we can do that.
Yeah.
I think we should look at that for a podcast.
Yeah.
Because then, like you say, people can they're then empowered. They have the information with regards to the questions and why and how to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah, because ultimately, we need to stop this from happening.
Yeah.
What are the consequences from that person that's kicked that asbestos? We listened to that on last week's podcast. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And God forbid, potentially that person who's kicked that,
they may go on to develop
has handed themselves a death sentence.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is the reality. They are the cold-hearted facts of what can happen. So yeah, we kind of just wanted to get that message out there. That it's not just us bleating on, and kind of, we're not making this up.
No.
This is it. This is happening in the real world.
Yeah.
If you actually look, these news cases and these news articles are actually out there. They're being published every day.
They are. I don't think they're published enough.
No,
to be honest, I don't think. I think for my experience that they kind of, unless they're having a quieter news day, they tend to leave asbestos alone and things like that. And I think there's a hell of a lot of these incidents and cases happening every single week, every single day. Fly tipping is another one that's in the news quite a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think cases of asbestos and disturbances and issues around it, I think they are kind of on the quiet a little bit more than what they should be.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to, like we talked about last week, about this big secret around asbestos.
Yeah, definitely, because these are the ones that actually just make it out of the people that it's happened to. How many tradespeople damage a bit, they don't want to say anything because they'll get into trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
How many people are contaminating areas, damaging stuff, but not saying anything because they'll get into trouble.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to delay the job. Or, all these ones that are just sort of, pardon the pun, swept under the carpet.
Yeah.
Literally, they're happening every day.
They are. I mean, you're right, and that does worry me as well. Like with tradespeople, just doing their everyday job, and we've seen this time and again. Right, in a ceiling void, you'll have an asbestos insulating board fire break, and to get cables through, it either has to be drilled or a hammer put through it so that they can feed the cables. Now, that person does their job, and that kind of thing's done and over with in 30 seconds. Hammer put through the AIB, cables fed through, they go and pull them, do whatever they need to do with the cables, they leave site. But that disturbance is in that ceiling void and probably coming out the air vents and all the rest of it for who knows how long. Millions of asbestos fibres would have been disturbed during that disturbance.
Yeah.
And this one person is they've done damage, they've left site, that's it, they're off, their exposure stops. But, I mean, take a shopping centre or a big shop, for instance. Thousands of people could be going through this place, again, getting exposed from silly things like that, silly incidents.
Yeah, definitely.
And like you say, I think these things happen more than people actually believe. Or
want to believe.
And then it goes back to, like we said at the beginning of, I'm all right, Jack. It won't happen to me, won't happen to my children, won't happen in my school. But I think the cold, hard reality and the facts are, no, this is happening day in, day out, week in, week out. Yeah, these incidents just keep going on and keep happening.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that wraps that one up. Remember, asbestos first, not last.